Over the last 5 years, India's education system, from pre-primary level to PhD level, has undergone sweeping reforms under the National Education Policy or NEP 2020. The policy replaced the 34-year-old policy introduced in 1986. The NEP 2020, which was aimed to bring about revolutionary changes to modernize India's education system, while also recommended to keep it rooted in Indian ethos, was launched on July 29, 2020. The policy was framed by a high-powered committee headed by former ISRO chief K. Kasturi Rangan. As the policy completes 5 years today, we at ThePrint analyzed how it fared so far, what are the most remarkable changes introduced, and what are the gaps in the implementation of this policy. First, let me tell our viewers what were the key reforms recommended under the NEP 2020. The policy advocated major reforms including a focus on foundational literacy and numeracy, multidisciplinary education, experiential learning, digital pedagogies, improved access to education, increasing the gross enrollment ratio in higher education, and promoting research and vocational training. It also emphasized education in the mother tongue, the promotion of India's traditional knowledge system, and internationalization of India's education system, among other priorities. 5 years on, many of the schemes and programs recommended under the policy have been launched. However, implementations remain uneven, varying widely across states, regions, and even individual universities. In many parts of the country, it is still fragmented and inconsistent. However, one of the major policy recommendations that was bringing an overarching body called Higher Education Commission of India or HECI is yet to be implemented. In fact, the government has not yet finalized the bill. The HECI is intended to serve as a single window for regulator for all higher education institutions. ThePrint interviewed various stakeholders to understand their journey under NEP 2020 so far and to track the progress of key policy decisions implemented under it. What we have found was that while the policy is making steady progress towards its predicted outcomes, stakeholders believe it is yet too early to expect widespread results in the diverse country like India, where education is a concurrent subject. Controversies marred NEP 2020 implementation right from the beginning. Soon after the policy came into force, opposition ruled states objected to the three-language formula proposed in the policy. The formula mandated that students learn 3 Indian languages up to class 8 and preferably until class 10th. The southern states, particularly Tamil Nadu, have objected to the three-language formula, arguing that it promotes Hindi imposition, even though NEP 2020 does not mandate or prefer any language under the formula. So what are the major changes NEP has brought in school education? Number 1. Overhaul school education structure, focus on foundational learning. The policy replaced the old 10+2 system with a fresh 5+3+3+4 structure. This new framework covers all children from age group 3 to 18. The school journey is now divided into 4 stages. The first is the foundational stage for ages 3 to 8 years. It includes 3 years of preschool or Balvatika or Anganwadi education and grade 1 and 2. Next is the preparatory stage for the age group 8 to 11 years, covering classes 3 to 5. Then comes the middle stage for ages 11 to 14, which includes classes 6 to 8. And finally, the secondary stage for age 14 to 18, which includes class 9 to 12. The secondary stage is further split into 2 parts, 9th and 10th and 11th and 12th. The policy puts a strong focus on early learning. It gives top priority to building reading and writing and basic mathematics skills among the young children. These skills are called Foundational Literacy and Numeracy or FLN. The goal is to make sure that every child has basic skills by the end of class 3. To help reach this goal, the government had launched the NIPUN Bharat initiative on 5th July 2021. The mission aims for every children to achieve FLN by the end of 2026-27. And for the same, it recommended play-based learning, new teaching methods, hands-on activities, and strong teaching training. The NIPUN Bharat initiative is largely appreciated. In fact, in the recently released Parakh Rashtriya Sarvekshan survey results, students of classes 3rd have performed better in foundational literacy and numeracy. The government has credited NIPUN Bharat for the same. However, the initiative works most effectively for the schools having better infrastructure and having sufficient teachers. So when it comes to the change structure in the school education, some schools are facing challenges in implementing this 3-year preparatory stage mandate under the NEP. For instance, schools were having nursery and KG which were enrolling 3-year-old and 4-year-old students. However, with the NEP 2020 fixing the age limit of 6-year-old in class first, all schools will now have to add one more class in preparatory stage. The second biggest recommendation of NEP was decolonization of education. However, it was not written in NEP, but it was communicated by the Union Education Minister, Dharmendra Pradhan. The National Curriculum Framework, which served as a guiding document for school education and textbook development, was released for the foundational stage in 2022 and for the rest of the school education in 2023. The NCF emphasizes incorporating more Indian context into education to foster pride in the country's culture. Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan stated that the NCF mandates aim to decolonize India's education system. Between last year and this year, NCERT has released new textbooks up to class 8s aligned with the NEP goals. A common theme across these textbooks is a greater emphasis on Indian contribution, a reduced focus on medieval rulers like the Mughals and the Delhi Sultanate, references to the Harappan civilization and Sindhu-Saraswati civilization, and the use of Bharat instead of India in most of the instances. For example, the new Class 7 Social Science textbook released in April this year omits references of Mughals and the Delhi Sultanate entirely. Instead, it introduced chapters on ancient Indian dynasties such as Magadha, Maurya, Shungas, and Satavahanas. In contrast, the Class 8 Social Science textbook released this month reintroduced the Mughals but present them in a very different way. The book highlighted instances of brutality and religious intolerance during their rule. At the same time, it portrays the Marathas in a more glorified light. While experts have described the changes as ideological move that selectively glorifies or vilifies historical figures, NCERT has defended themselves as an objective portrayal of history. The new textbooks include references of India's ancient knowledge systems, make greater use of Sanskrit vocabulary, and extensively highlight Indian contribution to science and mathematics. They also feature stories of war heroes. Third change in the school education system is change in the way students were assessed and introduction of 2 board exams. The policy emphasized continuous multidimensional assessment of students rather than relying on a single high-stake exams with an aim to discourage rote learning. In line with the same, Parak, a body was established under NCERT, designed a holistic progress card framework which will be in digital format. The Holistic Progressive Card or HPC takes into account feedback from peers, parents, self-assessment of students, teachers, and track their progress in different domains throughout the year. According to the latest data by Parak, as many as 26 states and UTs have either adopted or are in the process of adopting HPC up to class 8. While many private schools have adopted the HPC, most government schools are still not under its jurisdiction. The NEP had suggested to eliminate the high-stake aspects of board exams, and it recommended that all students will be allowed to take board exams up to 2 occasions. In the same line, the CBSE has recently adopted the 2-phase board exam policy for class 10, which will be implemented starting 2026 board exams. The 2-exam policy, however, raised concerns over logistical challenges. Another big scheme announced under NEP 2020 was PM-SHRI scheme, which has remained a bone of contention between the centre and many opposition ruled states. Tension between the states of Tamil Nadu, West Bengal and Kerala and the centre have also escalated further when the government announced the PM Schools for Rising India or PM-SHRI schemes in September 2022. The scheme aimed to upgrade existing schools into model institutions that reflect the vision of NEP 2020 with financial supports provided by the government. However, a key prerequisite for the participation was signing an MOU with the centre to adopt NEP 2020. The states opposed the scheme, terming it as NEP 2020 imposition. These 3 states have not yet signed an MOU to adopt the scheme, and as a result, the centre has withheld their Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan funds under which PM-SHRI is included. The Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan is the biggest school education scheme in the country. ThePrint has also analyzed the implementation of NEP in government versus private schools. We visited some government school in Haryana and private schools in Delhi and found that there was a huge gap between the implementation of policy in government versus private sectors. For instance, while in the private schools, there were proper pre-primary sections with toys and other educational tools prescribed under NEP 2020, the primary government schools in Haryana's Firozpur Jhirka had lack of infrastructure. The primary section was set up in a makeshift area having a tin roof. The roof was doubled as a kitchen that was serving the midday meals. The government school had only one teacher for 250 students. Similarly, in another government senior secondary schools nearby, there was a lack of teacher, computer lab, some science lab, and insufficient classrooms. Whereas in private schools, there were enough teachers, classrooms, separate lab for junior and senior students, and playgrounds, everything that was recommended as the spirit of NEP 2020. Due to these limitations, government schools are unable to provide hands-on learning, play-based education, and digital pedagogy as recommended under the policy. Experts stress that urgent need for targeted policy interventions to bridge the growing gap between private and government schools need to be taken. They emphasize that for NEP 2020 to move beyond paper and truly succeed, the next phase must prioritize inclusive implementation. Quality education must become a right, not a privilege, accessible to every child in every corner of the country. Now the vision is clear, the real challenge lies in delivering it. In part 2 of this video, we'll talk about the changes being introduced in the higher education system of India under NEP 2020. Keep watching The Print for more news updates.